You killed him, didn't you? My husband.
He was an assassin. Trust me, he won't take it personally.
We finally got a bunch of updates on James Bond 26. From the idea of setting the movie in the 1960s, inspired by a 2024 spy flick, to reports of creative disputes among producers over the next 007 and the Bond villain, there's a lot to unpack. Here's everything we know so far. Let's dive in. Rumors are still flying about the casting and director for James Bond 26, but we finally got an update on the timeline. Amazon MGM Studios exec Jennifer Salke shared some insight into the future of the franchise. When asked about the next movie's release, she said, "The global audience will be patient. We don't want too much time between films, but we are not concerned at this point." Not exactly a big reveal, but it's clear they're not rushing things. In terms of casting, Salke played it cool, saying, "There are a lot of ideas about potential actors that have popped up that I think are interesting," but she did not address any specific rumors, such as Aaron Taylor Johnson being offered the role of 007. This is her complete statement. "There are a lot of ideas that have popped up that I think are interesting. I think there are a lot of different ways we can go. We have a good and close relationship with Eon, Barbara, and Michael. We are not looking to disrupt the way those wonderful films are made. For us, we are taking their lead. The global audience will be patient. We don't want too much time between films, but we are not concerned at this point." That said, for those who still aren't clear on when James Bond 26 was confirmed, here's the scoop. It all started back when Amazon acquired MGM in 2022. Fans were a bit worried about the future of the franchise, but producer Michael G. Wilson quickly put those fears to rest, reassuring everyone that 007 would return, just as the end credits of No Time to Die promised. In a 2022 interview with Deadline, Wilson said, "It's a whole new world. We've got to see what happens with Amazon, but there'll always be a Bond." Fast forward to October 2024, Amazon MGM exec Jennifer Salke addressed the next Bond film, saying they're intentionally taking their time with the project. That said, a clear production timeline is still up in the air and probably will be for a while. The big question hanging over Bond 26 is, of course, who will replace Daniel Craig as James Bond. Henry Cavill has been a fan favorite pick for years, thanks to his Bond-like role in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Fun fact, Cavill was actually considered for Casino Royale, but was passed over because he was deemed too young. Now at 41, he might ironically be too old, especially since producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson reportedly want someone in their 30s who can commit to at least 3 films. Aaron Taylor Johnson has also been a top contender, but a recent Wall Street Journal report suggests that there's little progress on the next movie. Why? A creative dispute between Broccoli and Amazon, MGM's new owner. The conflict revolves around Amazon's push to expand the Bond franchise with spin-offs and TV shows, something Broccoli isn't on board with. With no story in place, the movie seems stalled, meaning any casting announcement could still be far off. Cavill might seem like the perfect 007, but his casting now feels less likely due to these delays. Plus, some argue he's too predictable, and the franchise could use a fresh shakeup after the emotional ending of No Time to Die. Instead of going with Cavill or even Taylor Johnson, it might be smarter to pick a lesser-known actor with no pre-existing baggage. After all, Daniel Craig wasn't a huge star before Casino Royale. His biggest role at the time was Layer Cake. At this point, Cavill as Bond seems more like a fan dream than a reality. We'll just have to wait and see who gets to don the iconic tuxedo next. Now, all this aside, I've been dying to say something since the start of this video, but let's dive into it now. Watching the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare has made me surprisingly excited about the historical potential of James Bond 26. Here's the thing, when it comes to espionage, the 1960s were peak Bond territory. It was the era of Cold War intrigue, suave spies, and cutting-edge gadgets. Yet over the years, the franchise has shifted into modern settings, losing some of that classic allure. I genuinely think a return to the 1960s could bring back that old-school Bond magic while giving the series a fresh start post No Time to Die. Guy Ritchie's The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare really hammered this idea home for me. Set in the 1940s, it dives into the daring missions of Winston Churchill's Special Operations Executive during World War II. Sure, the movie didn't break box office records, but its historical backdrop was an absolute win, showing just how effective a period spy story can be. Imagine taking a similar approach with Bond, but shifting the timeline to the 1960s, the golden age of espionage. This could work well, especially for James Bond 26 for several reasons. First, it solves the Bond is dead problem. Reviving him after No Time to Die would cheapen that incredible ending. Instead, setting the film in the past offers a clean slate. You could explore Bond's early days in MI6, giving us insight into his backstory and motivations. Plus, it's a chance to introduce a younger, relatively unknown actor as 007, similar to how Daniel Craig wasn't a massive star before Casino Royale. A 1960s Bond film could also bring something fresh by diving into the social and political dynamics of the time. Think Mad Men levels of sharp writing mixed with classic Bond action. And if we're talking backstory, how about bringing back 006? Exploring the early friendship and eventual fallout between Bond and Alec Trevelyan could be fascinating. It's the kind of dynamic that could make Bond 26 feel deeply personal and engaging. Sure, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare didn't crush it at the box office, and that might make studios hesitant about a period Bond movie. But I don't think the historical setting was the issue. Critics praised the movie for its fun tone and compelling historical elements, qualities that could translate beautifully into a Bond film if done right. In the end, a 1960s setting might be the ideal way to honor the franchise's beginnings while establishing an intriguing new chapter if Bond is to reinvent itself. What do you think? Would you be on board for a retro Bond adventure? Let me know in the comments. And last but not least, let's not forget this juicy bit of behind-the-scenes Bond drama. A recent report from the Wall Street Journal spills the tea on a creative dispute between Bond producers Barbara Broccoli and Greg Wilson over the direction of the next 007 and the villain. Apparently, Wilson is more open to shaking things up, potentially casting a person of color, a gay man, or even a woman as Bond. Meanwhile, Broccoli, while fully on board with a non-white or gay actor, is holding firm that Bond should remain a British man. And honestly, with her deep-rooted history in the franchise, dating back to her teenage years working alongside her father, it's hard to imagine her budging on this one. The debate isn't just limited to Bond himself. They're also clashing over the next villain. Some feel a stateless billionaire autocrat is a timely and fitting adversary, but Broccoli's counter? Been there, done that. Think Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and even Casino Royale. Finding fresh ideas for Bond villains isn't easy, especially since the franchise has tackled everything from rogue agents to megalomaniacal tycoons. With Broccoli and Wilson, 64 and 82 respectively, preparing to pass the torch to the next generation, likely Greg Wilson, these creative debates are shaping the future of the Bond franchise. However, with Broccoli holding significant sway and public opinion seemingly on her side, the odds favor Bond staying true to tradition, a British man. That said, there's still a real possibility of breaking some boundaries by casting a non-white or gay actor. What do you think? Should Bond stick to tradition or break the mold? And what kind of villain would you love to see next? Let's hash it out in the comment below. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Don't forget, your suggestions for future videos are always welcome in the comments below.